Hey, what's up, and welcome back to the HK Rifle Works YouTube channel. Also, welcome to part 2 of the Precision 1022 upgrade program. Now, if you've missed part 1, please take a moment, go back and check that video out. Essentially what it's going to do is give you a better grasp of what we're doing here and review and outline some of our testing parameters. So moving on to part 2 here, I wanted to take note of a few things. I wanted to show you our baseline rifle as it sits here. I wanted to review a quick barrel break-in and then also free accuracy. Now, what do I mean by free accuracy? Essentially, I'm talking about an action screw torque test. So a good bit of rimfire rifles and even some centerfire rifles can benefit favorably by varying your torque values on the action screw. Now, we'll get to that here a little bit later in the video, but one thing I wanted to do, like I said, is just give you a quick rundown of the rifle. So I'm going to roll in a picture of the rifle that we started with, and this is a 20-inch 1022. It's the Light Varmint Tactical, I believe. And the only thing different from that rifle and the one you see in the video here is I ended up swapping the barrel from a 20-inch barrel that came on it to a 16-inch FJ Feddersen match grade barrel. The 20-inch was just a good bit longer than I wanted to use on the rifle. It's a little bit unwieldy. Especially because I shoot suppressed. So for the baseline rifle, we're essentially going to be using the rifle that you see in the picture with a barrel swap. So you can compare the groups that I'm going to show you now with maybe your 1022 or your factory 1022. But just a few other components that I wanted to touch base on is for glass, we're using the Strike Eagle 3 to 18 by 44. If you're interested in this optic, I have an unboxing and first thoughts up on the channel. Make sure to check that out, like I said, if you're interested. The optic is sitting in some Vortex Pro rings, and I've also swapped the rail from the factory Ruger Picatinny rail on top to one of the EGW 20 MOA bases. So we're gonna, again, it's gonna give us a little bit more scope travel back in our elevation. And I think I tested it from my 0 into bottoming out the elevation. I've got about 19.8 mils to work with. So we can definitely stretch this rifle out. Also, I have 10 mils in the reticle, so that gives us just shy of 30 mils to work with. Anyways, moving on, this is gonna be in the factory stock. And a lot of people ask how I paint my rifles. And how I did this one is I did a base coat of flat dark earth, and then I took this stencil right here and I just did some brown and green streaks right over it. So it turned out pretty good. I like it. I don't know how long this stock is going to hold up just because the Hogue is rubber. So we'll see how it holds up. But anyways, I ended up lightening up the trigger just a tad. I sent the Ruger BX trigger to Brimstone Gunsmithing. So this trigger pulls right at about 1.25 pounds, pound and a half. And it essentially won't make the rifle more accurate, but what it will do is just make the rifle easier to shoot, if that makes sense. So it reduces the human error or human input into the rifle when you're breaking that shot off. So it just it gives us a higher probability of being as accurate as possible with this rifle. Now up front, we're going to be running the Atlas bipod, and this is going to be mounted to, I believe this is a Caldwell. It's one of the sling swivel to Picatinny adapters, and it works out pretty well. I like it for 30 bucks. It's a pretty solid investment if you don't want to drill into your stock or anything like that. And then last but not least, we are going to be shooting suppressed the whole time. So I use the Dead Air Mask 22. And just so you know, all the groups that I'm going to show you, everything like that, it's always through the Mask 22. I shoot probably, I don't know, 99.9% of the time suppressed where I can. So again, I just wanted to make mention of that. Also, in the back of the receiver, I have one of the Kid buffers back there. So the factory one from the Ruger is just a metal pin, essentially. And when the bolt comes back and hits it, it makes a pretty loud clanging noise. But the nice thing about the Kid part is it's this rubber, or maybe Viton, I don't know the exact name of the rubber, but it's essentially a rubberized tube, and you shove a stainless steel pin through it, and it really quiets down the bolt when it cycles. So under suppressed fire with this gun, it's extremely quiet. So anyways, I wanted to give you a quick review of the rifle. Let me get these targets up on the bench here. I'll reposition the camera and we'll start reviewing barrel break-in and take a look at some of these groups. So we've got everything up here on the bench. And before we jump into the action screw torque test, I wanted to touch base real quick on barrel break-in. So there's essentially two groups of people here. One group will say, you don't need to do it, you're good to go. The other group will say, hey, make sure you follow the manufacturer's instructions for barrel break-in procedure. So just to let you know, again, this is a brand new barrel. What I did was I ended up shooting, I don't know, maybe 100, 120 rounds or so. I was just plinking around. At my range, we have like the berms, we could throw clays up there. So I was just plinking around, making sure the barrel was worked in at least just a little bit so we weren't shooting on a completely fresh barrel. I've got some Vortec Rimfire blend. I just did a couple of pull through patches and then swabbed to make sure everything was dry every, I don't know, 10, 15 shots or so. And before we started shooting these groups, I did a full clean and then we went into our fouling load right here. So let me reposition this camera and we'll get into these groups. So let's take a look at some of these results. Now, I don't know if I mentioned it when we were talking about barrel break-in, but for that process, I was only using CCI standard velocity. The reason I mentioned that is just to touch on only lead ammunition went down this barrel, no copper has been down the barrel. Now moving on to the action screw torque value test, I'm using this RWS rifle match. This has been great ammo for me. It's been really consistent. It isn't incredibly expensive and it shoots pretty well in all of my rifles. Now, if you went back or if you've seen part one of this series, I very specifically mentioned when we're talking about match grade 22s, they can be very picky in terms of accuracy and consistency in regards to ammunition. So not just brand, but lot number. So essentially, I can buy this RWS rifle match and it can shoot lights out for me. Maybe I decided to buy some more, I don't know, say a year down the line, and I purchase a different lot number. There is the potential that my rifle could not like the lot number that I purchased compared to the original lot that I had. So again, I just wanted to mention that, but I have plenty of the same lot of this and it seems to shoot pretty well. Moving on to the action screw torque value test, just some of the parameters. I shot a 10 round fouling group at 15 inch-pounds, and then we shot two 5-shot groups from 15 inch-pounds to 25 inch-pounds in increments of 2.5 inch-pounds. So moving over to the fouling group right here. Again, like I said, this is 10 shots at 50 yards. All of this has been done at 50 yards. We use the Wheeler fat wrench here to make sure that our torque values are correct. Get this out of the way so I can point. So for our foul group at 15 inch-pounds at 50 yards, we ended up printing a 10-shot group on a clean bore that measured 850 thousandths. Moving on to our 15 inch-pound test, we shot two 5-shot groups. The group on the left here was 820 thousandths. The group on the right was 890 thousandths. They averaged 855 thousandths. Moving to the 17.5 inch-pound group, the group on the left here shot 740 thousandths. The group on the right shot 450 thousandths. Oh, and I should have mentioned as well, the average of 17.5 or 17.5 inch-pounds, it averaged 595 thousandths, so just over half an inch. Moving over to the 20 inch-pound group here, on the left, it printed an 825 thousandth group. On the right, it printed a 900 thousandth group, so 9/10 of an inch there, and it averaged 863 thousandths. For the 22.5 inch-pound groups, on the left, we printed half of an inch, or 500 thousandths, and on the right here, we printed 750 thousandths for an average of 625 thousandths. Our last groups here at 25 inch-pounds, on the left here, we printed 1 inch and 140 thousandths, and then on the right here, we printed 740 thousandths for an average of 940 thousandths of an inch. So we can take a quick look at this. These aren't the most amazing groups that I've ever seen. Again, be on the lookout for part 3. We're going to compare it to the 457, essentially for all of the ammunition testing. But what I settled on is 17.5 inch-pounds here. So that's what I'm going to set this rifle at, and that's what I'm going to do the testing at until we swap the stock. So We'll probably go with a KRG. We may go Victor Titan. I think MDT has an Oryx for this. I've got a few up in the air, but I'm leaning KRG. If you have any recommendations, definitely put them down in the comments. Let me know what you think about this testing. Let me know what you're shooting. Let me know what results you're getting. Definitely make sure to tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog I said hi. We'll see you in part 3.